So, reviewing Mrs. Dalloway. So, as you can tell by the very clear sign to my this should be well, it's my right, but it's both our rights. Anyways, so basically, I got a new microphone, so hopefully the audio is slightly better. But anyways, Mrs. Dalloway. So, after I read the book, I mean, it was. I'll be honest, it's not the easiest read. So I actually started Mrs. Dalloway a long time ago. I started it about a year ago. I got 50 pages in, but I couldn't do it because um, Virginia Woolf's very famous for her use of things like free and direct discourse and uh, stream of consciousness. And so, while those are very great techniques, they do make for quite a difficult reading experience. It's also important to note that this entire book has no chapters. It's one long thing. So there's no sort of waypoints to sort of take a stop. When they say a stream of consciousness, it really is a stream of consciousness. Like the entire book is just, there's no stops. It's just one whole thing of thinking and thinking. So it sort of starts with this lady, Clarissa Dalloway, who is trying to hold a party, and it sort of goes into her like conscience and not just hers, but everyone she knows. Like the story has this thing where sort of one character will be thinking of something. So it might be Clarissa, and she might see something or hear something, or something that makes her think of someone, and that will trickle into this sort of this memory bomb, this like free and direct discourse stream of consciousness kind of like um just explanation of this thing, right? And then it'll be them talking, so it'll be Clarissa, and then it'll go to this like, other character, and then this will slide into this other character. So unlike normal books, right? Like, unlike other novels where it's like, okay, we're going to talk about Bob now. Bob's out buying like an orange or like some lemons, right? And then it'll be like, okay, well now we're going to pan over, not like that literally, but it's like, oh, so Bob was buying fruit, and then Rachel was at home watching TV, and it'll be that kind of story. But with um this book, it's more like it'd be more like Bob is buying oranges, and then when she sees the oranges, it makes her think of Rachel, right? Like Bob thinks about Rachel when he buys the oranges. And so it'll be like, oh, Bob thinks about Rachel, and you think about this memory that of when they first met together, right? And this is just from seeing an orange, so nothing's really happened in real life. It'll just be like, nothing's happening, but there'll be this whole thing, and then it'll trickle into, and then it'll be like, oh, and then Rachel's like on her TV, and then she's looking at TV, and then she's thinking about Bob, and then this memory they had together, all this thing she wants to do. And so even though it's just one day in London, and also the book's it's infused, like it's intertwined with London. Everything about it is like really, there's tons of. I've never been to London, but I feel like after reading the book, well, I could probably know everything there is there because got such a like great description of everything in London. So yeah. So anyway, so basically, Clarissa's setting up this party. She's out and about in London. She does that whole thing, blah 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 blah. And then that's sort of her thing, right? That's her plot. She's trying to do a party, and then that kind of intertwines with these other characters like Peter. So Peter likes Clarissa. They used to be like a thing together, but then after what happened was Clarissa got with her now husband Richard Dalloway, who's a English lord, and so Peter's sort of even though Peter is still this like bourgeois kind of rich character, but he can't be with Clarissa because she's with Richard. And so, so basically what happens is that, like you have this thing where, oh, he can't be with her, but he still really likes her. And then he sort of thinks about, oh, thinks back, flashback to back in the past when Clarissa wasn't, like married yet. And then they were like, and then like she wasn't constrained by her marriage, sort of. And so, yeah, there's that whole thing. And then you get this, like, flashback then to, like, Richard thinking, and Richard will be thinking about, like, when Clarissa was young too. And then Richard tries to buy roses for, or tries to buy flowers for Clarissa. But there's this, like, passage where he self-doubts himself to, like, craziness, where he's there, like, thinking, like, oh, I don't know how I feel about, um, like, buying flowers. Like, is she gonna like it? How do I tell her I love her? And he ends up not really saying anything. He had this whole giant thing of him thinking, but he just doesn't really say anything. Because but that's like the whole stream of consciousness sort of thing about it. So yeah, and so there's all these other characters, right? So there's also this character called Septimus, who's a war veteran. So all the characters are sort of tied in by the Great War because this is after the Great War, World War One. So um, what happens is Septimus is PTSD, and he's also got this kind of connection to Clarissa, where at the really end of the book, what happens is he kills himself because what happens is he's like deeply the PTSD affects him really deeply, and so he like sort of thinks about it a lot during the book, and he's also constantly trying to like because he thinks that he feels really guilty because of all the things he saw in the war. So he's sort of connected to Clarissa and this sort of being like constrained in this mental kind of like cage, right? Yeah, and the plot, I'll be honest. So, this sounds kind of muddled, but it's because the plot in the book's quite it's quite tough to like decipher because again, the plot is simple, right? Basically, if you were to describe it, it'd be Clarissa goes to like prepare for a party and they have a party and the book's over. Like that's basically the plot of the story. But obviously, because of all the thinking, it makes everything sort of muddled, everything sort of like coming here, coming back and forth, kind of. Yeah, so yeah, but basically what happens is they're kind of connected through consciousness. And then at the really end, yeah, Clarissa just has her party and like everything just yeah. But it's look, it's a bad description, but um I would highly recommend you read it for yourself because it's quite hard to encapsulate the feeling of reading Mrs. Dalloway unless you've read it yourself. The sort of confusion from the stream of consciousness, that sort of like that sort of feeling, right? Because it's strange to read. It's not like reading a normal book where you can kind of go, oh, this is what happens, this is what happens, this is the plot. Like it's sort of like this book of just pure consciousness. It's less about plot and just about feeling, feeling the vibe. But yeah, if I were to give it, I'd say I'd give it maybe from a reading perspective, probably like a 7 out of 10. But I understand this is a monumental piece of literature. So yeah, but that's basically it.